Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kraken Aquatics podcast. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something that's probably crossed your mind, if you've ever booked a dive trip.
Oh, yeah.
Dive travel insurance.
Yeah, for sure.
That extra layer of protection that can really make a difference when you're exploring those underwater worlds, especially in those more remote and exotic locations.
That's right. Yeah. A lot of divers just assume that their regular travel insurance has them covered.
Right.
But there are some, pretty unique risks that come with diving.
Yeah.
Things that your standard policy might not even think about.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Sure.
What makes dive travel insurance so special?
Yeah.
What are those unique risks we need to be aware of?
So imagine you're on a dive and something unexpected happens.
Okay.
Maybe you surface too quickly or have an encounter with marine life that leaves you needing medical attention. And in a lot of dive locations, especially remote ones, the nearest proper medical facility could be miles away.
Right.
That's where dive travel insurance steps in.
It covers things like emergency evacuation and hyperbaric chamber treatment for decompression sickness.
Wow, those hyperbaric chambers aren't cheap, are they?
No, they're not.
I've heard stories.
You're telling me. They can cost thousands of dollars per day.
Yeah.
And if you need to be airlifted to a hospital, you could be looking at a bill that would make your head spin.
Right.
One article I read mentioned a diver who needed an emergency evacuation from a remote island.
Oh, wow.
His insurance ended up covering over $50,000 in expenses.
Wow.
Without it, he would have been in serious financial trouble.
That's a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
So dive travel insurance basically acts as a safety net,
Yeah,
both for your health and your wallet.
absolutely.
So for those of you listening who are thinking, okay, I'm getting it, but what exactly does this insurance cover? Can you walk us through the specifics?
Of course. So a solid dive travel insurance policy covers a range of things.
You've got the big ones we just talked about, medical emergencies related to diving like decompression sickness and marine life injuries and those potentially life-saving evacuations. But it goes beyond that.
Okay.
You also typically get coverage for damaged or lost dive gear,
Right.
which can be a lifesaver if you're traveling with expensive equipment.
Yeah, for sure.
Plus, you get all those standard travel benefits like trip cancellation, lost luggage, and coverage for those unexpected medical situations that might pop up even when you're not diving.
Right.
It's about having that peace of mind, knowing you're protected on land and underwater.
It's like a comprehensive package for the adventurous soul.
Exactly.
But let's be realistic. Yeah. There are always limitations, right?
Yeah.
What are the typical things dive travel insurance doesn't cover?
You're right. No insurance policy covers everything.
Right.
One of the most common exclusions is pre-existing conditions.
Oh, okay.
So if you have a health issue that predates your policy, it might not be covered.
I see.
And this might seem obvious, but it's worth emphasizing. Diving under the influence of alcohol or drugs is a big no-no.
Of course. Yeah.
Any injuries resulting from that are not going to be covered.
Right. Because responsible diving is the foundation of everything, isn't it?
Absolutely. And there are a few more things to keep in mind.
Okay.
Some policies have depth limits.
Okay.
If you're planning to go beyond recreational diving depths, you'll want to make sure your policy covers those depths or consider specialized coverage.
Right.
Another common exclusion is technical diving, like cave diving.
Okay.
Those activities usually require additional endorsements or specific policies.
So it's all about matching the policy to your diving style and ambitions.
Exactly.
Sounds like there's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
Now let's get down to brass tacks.
Okay.
Why would you, dear listener, actually need this kind of insurance? What are the real-world scenarios where it becomes, a lifesaver?
Well, the scenarios are more common than you might think.
Okay.
Remember that diver who needed the $50,000 evacuation? That could be anyone.
Right.
Think about the cost of a hyperbaric chamber, the potential for lost or damaged gear in transit. Those costs add up quickly. And then there are those travel disruptions that can throw a wrench into your plans.
Right. Things like flight cancellations or sudden illnesses or with non-refundable trip costs.
Exactly. And those costs can be significant, especially if you've booked flights, accommodations, and dive packages in advance.
Yeah.
Dive travel insurance helps mitigate those financial risks, giving you that peace of mind to truly enjoy your trip.
It's like having a backup plan for the unexpected.
Yeah.
Not just for your dives, but for your entire trip.
That's right.
Okay, I'm convinced.
Good.
But now I'm wondering, with all the different insurance options out there, how do you choose the right policy? Where do you even begin?
Yeah.
It can feel overwhelming.
I hear you. There are a lot of choices, but let's simplify it. First, think about what kind of diving you'll be doing. Are you a recreational diver sticking to the well-trodden paths?
Yeah.
Or are you a thrill seeker planning some deep dives or venturing into caves?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Your policy needs to align with your diving style.
right.
What else is important?
Look for comprehensive coverage that includes those key areas we've talked about: medical expenses, evacuation, and gear protection.
Right.
Those are your non-negotiables.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned before, pay close attention to those depth and activity limits.
So no point in having insurance that doesn't cover the dives you're actually planning to do right.
Exactly. Once you've got a handle on those basics, start researching different providers.
Okay.
There are some reputable ones out there that specialize in dive travel insurance, like DAN.
Okay.
That's the Divers Alert Network.
Right.
They're known for their expertise in diving-related emergencies. Payee Travel Insurance is another popular option, especially for those of you who have trained with Payee dive centers.
So look for providers with a solid track record in the diving world. Any other tips for navigating this insurance maze?
Always read the fine print.
Right.
Seriously, don't skip this step.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand the exclusions, coverage limits, and claim procedures before you commit.
It's about making an informed decision, not just clicking the buy now button without really knowing what you're getting.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about something that's probably on everyone's mind.
Sure.
The cost of dive travel insurance.
Yeah.
What can people expect to pay?
You're right. Cost is a big factor. But before we throw out numbers,
Okay.
it's important to understand what influences those prices. The length of your trip is a big one.
All right.
Obviously, a longer trip means higher premiums.
Yeah.
Your destination also plays a role.
Okay.
Some places, especially remote ones, might have higher premiums because of the increased risk or the cost of evacuation.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all pricing model. What about the type of diving you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Does that affect the price?
Absolutely. Technical diving, for example, is usually considered higher risk and might come with a higher premium.
Yeah.
But on average, dive travel insurance can range from around $30 to over $100 per trip.
Okay. That's actually more affordable than I expected.
Yeah.
Considering the potential costs of a diving emergency, it seems like a pretty reasonable investment.
It is.
What about those of us who are frequent divers, always jetting off to some new underwater paradise?
Yeah.
Is there a way to make the insurance more cost-effective?
You're in luck. If you dive multiple times a year, an annual policy won't be the way to go.
Oh, okay.
It provides ongoing coverage throughout the year, so you don't have to buy individual policies for each trip.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
So you've chosen your policy, you're all set, ready to dive in.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any practical things you can do to make the most of your insurance, to ensure it's there for you when you need it?
Here's the thing. Buying the insurance is just the first step.
Okay.
You need to be prepared to actually use it if the need arises. First and foremost, buy your insurance early. Don't wait until the last minute.
Right, because sometimes things happen even before you leave for your trip.
Exactly. You want to be covered for those pre-trip cancellations or unexpected emergencies that might force you to postpone your travel plans.
Makes sense. What about once you're on the trip?
Mm-hmm.
Any tips for staying prepared?
Always carry your insurance documentation with you.
Okay.
A copy of the policy emergency contact numbers and any relevant medical information.
It's like that old saying, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Right. And speaking of being prepared, familiarize yourself with the claim procedures.
Okay.
Know how to file a claim, what documentation you'll need, how to keep track of expenses related to the claim.
Right.
That way, if something does happen, you're not scrambling to figure things out in a stressful situation.
It's about being proactive and
Yeah.
taking those steps to ensure a smooth process if you need to make a claim.
Exactly.
Now, I know some listeners might be thinking, are there any alternatives to dive travel insurance? Is there any way to get some level of protection without buying a separate policy?
There are a few options out there, but they often come with limitations.
Okay.
You might be tempted to rely on your general travel insurance, but it usually doesn't offer the same level of diving-specific coverage.
So it might not cover those big-ticket items like hyperbaric treatment or evacuation?
Exactly. Some dive organizations include accident coverage and emergency assistance as part of their membership benefits.
Okay.
So that's worth looking into.
It's good to know that there might be some additional protection baked into your membership.
Yeah,
What about credit cards? Don't some of them come with travel insurance perks?
they do, but the coverage can be pretty basic, and it's rare to find one that specifically addresses diving-related incidents.
Right.
You'd really need to read the fine print of your credit card benefits to see if it's sufficient for your needs.
So it's not a guaranteed solution.
Yeah,
All right, let's cut to the chase.
sure.
Is dive travel insurance really worth it? What are the key things listeners should consider when weighing this decision?
I think it boils down to this.
Okay.
How comfortable are you with risk?
Mm-hmm.
As divers, we're venturing into an environment that's inherently unpredictable, right?
That's true. We can take all the precautions in the world, but sometimes things happen that are beyond our control.
Exactly. And dive travel insurance is about acknowledging those risks and taking steps to mitigate them.
Mm,
It's about protecting yourself, your loved ones, and your finances from the unexpected.
right.
For occasional divers, especially those heading to remote or higher risk locations, I'd say it's almost essential.
It's about having that peace of mind, knowing that you're not alone if something goes wrong.
Right. And for frequent divers, as we discussed, an annual policy can provide that ongoing protection and peace of mind at a reasonable cost.
So it's a personal decision, but one that deserves careful thought.
Yeah.
Consider your risk tolerance, the financial impact of a potential emergency, and the peace of mind that comes with knowing you're protected.
I like to think of it this way. Dive travel insurance isn't just about the worst case scenario. It's about empowering you to dive with confidence, knowing you have a safety net in place.
Right.
It's about enhancing the entire diving experience.
That's a great way to look at it. It's not about dwelling on the negative, but about embracing the adventure with a sense of responsibility and preparedness.
Exactly. And that sense of responsibility extends to those who dive with us.
Hmm.
Having insurance allows us to focus on enjoying the experience, knowing that we're not putting an undue burden on others if something unexpected happens.
It's about being a responsible member of the diving community and looking out for each other.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
We have.
We've explored what dive travel insurance is, why it's important, and how to choose the right policy. We've even tackled those tough questions about cost and alternatives.
We've really taken a deep dive into the world of dive travel insurance, and I hope our listeners feel more informed and empowered to make the best decision for their own diving adventures.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this episode, what's the one key message you want our listeners to take away?
Dive smart, dive safe, and dive with peace of mind.
Okay.
Remember, dive travel insurance isn't just a piece of paper. It's an investment in your passion, your safety, and the memories you'll create beneath the waves.
Well said. It's about embracing the adventure while knowing you have a safety net in place. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your expertise.
It was my pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for tuning into the Kraken Aquatics podcast. We hope you found this deep dive into dive travel insurance informative and helpful.
Happy bubbles, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Kraken Aquatics podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.